I know what you were thinking. You were thinking, wait, Vaughn's going to comment on all these things? Like, that's not going to work. You're right. I tried that last year and it didn't work. It took me like 20 hours to get through a single post of comments. So I come to you regularly via video in my sweet office. And I go through your comments online and I process those. I add my own stuff and I post these videos for you to watch. Most of you don't. If history tells me anything, only a fraction of you, only the good students will watch these videos. But this course would be nothing if I didn't say anything, if you were just commenting into the abyss and showing up once a week, like that would suck. So these are here for your consumption, for your inspiration, for your um, education, hopefully. And I, I write things down over here. So if I'm looking over here, that's why there's words. And first video is about the first day, first post, SNL. Thanks to everyone who was in class on Monday. It was shitty weather, and I think everyone was there, so that warms my heart a little bit. Two, um, but I apologize for the technical difficulties. Hopefully, you got through everything and saw it on the post. So let's get into this now. I wanted uh, this part of the course to be about advertising, basically, and it's interesting the ways in which you guys took it because a lot of the focus was on the social issues or the cultural implications of what the commercials were about, not necessarily advertising as a tool of the television industry. Um, so that is part of the beauty of Saturday Night Live and the commercial parodies is that they are at once skewering, criticizing the ad industry in general and what it does to us and how it manipulates us and all those kinds of things, how it lies to us, basically. I mean, let's not sugarcoat it. They're just trying to trick you. Like you are constantly trying to be being wait, you are trying to be tricked. You are constantly be they are attempting to trick you constantly. And they're pretty good at it. Um, so there's that element, and there's also like each individual parody is about a specific issue within the culture. So like it's like a double whammy, and they'll get you either way. Part of the beauty of sketch comedy in general. I'll start there. Um, I think Lizzie brought this up in her comment. She's clearly taken one of my courses before. Sketch comedy is, at least right now, it's the most immediate comedic medium in that it's really commenting on this stuff in real time. You have the opportunity to find something relevant and get something out to the people, whether it's online or on SNL or another comedy show, very quickly and respond um, with more pointed focus. And that's the beauty of it. Stand up. People take a year at least to put together their act. Um, movies take a year or 2 years to make. TV shows take months to put together and things like that. So it's hard to keep up. Sketch is, with SNL specifically, weekly, every week. It's like, what happened this week? Like, that's refreshing. And that keeps things relevant. It keeps it focused on current issues. The immediacy of sketch comedy is a huge strength of the medium itself. So don't forget that. Um, I'm of the belief that we should be personally offended by pretty much all advertising, mostly because of what it assumes of you, what it thinks of you. The industry, it thinks that you'll just fall for anything loud, sexy, bright, new, like, all the buzzwords, and we'll be like, oh, what? It's sexy? Cool. Give me it. I need to be sexy. What? Oh, it's loud? That's why all the commercials are louder than the TV shows that you watch when you eventually get to an ad. Um, we should be offended. Like, it should make you angry when you look at a commercial, not parodies, actual commercials. Like, what? Like, what do they think of me? Like, and I'll be honest, they don't really. They it's in their best interest to cluster everybody into as rigid a group as they can, right? So you see it in some of the commercials that we watched, like the male female uh, distinction. Like, these things are for men only, these things are for women only. Like, that's one of their favorite moves. And what does it assume about men? It assumes that men are like six things, right? What is it? What's a man? In our culture, what's a man? It's meat, sports, trucks, guns, brews, and chicks. Yeah, that's it. So if you can get any number of those things in the mix, you got them. You got the men. Maybe tools. Maybe throw tools in there too. Um, and that's, I mean, I guess that's cool. But I'll give you an example of this. Like, there's an old Dodge Durango commercial that really had me questioning uh, a lot of things. So I'll give you the brief synopsis of the commercial. So it's this husband and wife, and they have just bought a new Dodge Durango. I don't even know if they still make that car, but they're in the car driving home from the dealership, and they got a little kid, probably 1.5 or something, in the back, and it's a boy, little son. So they get in the car, they're driving away. The shot is of the mom in the passenger seat going like, oh, look at it, it's leather. And look at the DVDs, like all these different DVDs screens, and oh, listen, look at basically the frills of the car. And the dad driving home is getting visibly pissed that she's spewing this bullshit to her son. So they cut to the next shot is they're at home, the car's in the driveway, running, the hood's up, and the dad has his son just dangling him over the engine. He's like, "Can you say Hemi, son? Can you say Hemi?" Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what it's all about. So I watched that commercial and I'm like, wait a minute. What does that say about me? I'm a man, technically, and I'm watching this and I'm like, the thing that appealed to me about this Dodge Durango was all the things that the woman was talking about. I don't know anything about cars, like how they work. Not really. There's a battery, I think. So Hemi, I don't know what that means. It's probably some acronym for like horse erection maximize intensity. I don't know, something like that. I had no, I, I had no connection to the man, and I connected with the woman in terms of this Dodge Durango commercial. So what does that say about me? I'd like to think I'm a man, but according to the advertising industry, I'm not. I mentioned that commercial in class on Monday about the Summer's Eve body wash, and the guy freaks out when he finds out that it's Summer's Eve and he loses his shit. Um, the industry is invested in keeping everything separate because if we realize that we don't need specific things for men and women, and we don't need to sort of cater to those sort of rigid stereotypes, well, then they can't continue to try to trick us. So they're invested greatly in sort of compartmentalizing everybody. So this is only for kids, this is only for men, this is only for women, this is only for black people, this is only for white people, this is only for Latinos, this is, they are a tool in our culture that helps deepen or further that divide between us, the way seemingly our politics and things like that does. So yeah, you should be offended by pretty much everything. Be like, you think I'm that dumb? Here's the thing, I'm fucking that dumb a lot of the time. I'll buy any cereal if it's just to buy it. If it's new and I've never heard of it, I'm like, yeah, all right, cool. I like the box. Like what? Like that's like how sad it is. Um, I mentioned this in class too. It's a biggie. Need versus want. The advertising industry is, invested in obviously compartmentalizing, but also just blurring the line between need and want. Things that we need become the things that we want, and vice versa. And when that happens, the advertisers win. If you think you need things that you merely want, you're fucked and you lose. So, I mean, the case in point is cell phones. You don't. I see you. You don't need a cell phone. You want it because everyone else has one and they're cool and they're like whatever, but you don't need it. We've been conditioned to think that we do. That's a perfect blurred distinction between need and want. Here's a key. If you don't need to be told to buy things you need. Does that make sense? This came up in class. Like, you don't need a commercial for food. Like, everyone knows that that's what you need to live. You don't need a commercial for clothes or houses or, like, I guess in some cases, transportation, whatever it is. You don't need a commercial for that. So if there's a commercial for something, you probably don't need it. Oh, yeah. Right? Tell me if I'm wrong about that. Right? You don't need to be told to buy things you need. And that you only need probably a handful of things to live, like to be happy and healthy and all those things. You only need a handful of things. You need tools, you need trucks, you need chicks, you need meat, you need guns, and you need sports and brews. No. What do you need? Human contact, food, shelter, water, a job, I guess, to get those things or whatever. So that's interesting when you think about it that way. But that need versus want ask yourself, do I need this thing or do I just merely want this thing? It would be nice to have. It helps to at least acknowledge the distinction, um, instead of sort of playing into that whole thing. Um, I always ask the question, if we started over with no advertising, no one telling you what you quote unquote need, would we be as shitty as we are? I don't know. I kind of feel like we wouldn't be as shitty as we are. Um, how and think about the money that goes into advertising and tricking you. Think about it. It's billions of dollars spent tricking people. Like that, number one, should be you should be like bummed out about that a little bit. But like for an industry that should just be, here's a thing you can buy. Like why isn't, if every commercial was, here's a thing you can buy. Every commercial, the product goes up on the screen. Here's a thing you can buy. Thank you. No trickery there. And that's one of the things about the SNL commercials that I like. They're acknowledging that trickery by giving you the reality of it. So the EPT commercial that nobody commented about, maybe it just was a little too close to home for some of you. The EPT pregnancy test commercial is perfect. Like in all those actual EPT commercials or pregnancy test commercials, it's a newlywed couple and they've been trying, and it's this really emotional, and it comes back positive and they're like ecstatic and like, we're starting a family. And it's this very idyllic situation. And I guarantee you, if you ran the numbers, I haven't, but if you ran the numbers, a majority of EPT purchases or pregnancy test purchases are the situation presented in the SNL commercial. Two college kids hooked up, and there's a scare, and they're sitting there just like praying that it's a negative, right? Just like that feeling was palpable. And Seth Meyers is missing his fantasy football draft. And just all the intricacies of that. Like that's probably closer to the reality of the situation with a pregnancy test than what you see in the actual commercial. And that's what makes that funny. So yeah, I wrote this down. I don't know. Oh, I think it's mostly towards medical, a lot of pharmaceutical commercial parodies. May cause anal leakage and testicle explosions, but there's a nice family playing a board game in the background, or throwing a football around the backyard. The disconnect between the medication and the actual commercial, right? They're just trying to paint this picture, this idyllic scenario, and you sort of associate that with like, oh, this what will give me this life of leisure? Oh, Abilify, cool. Where do I get it? When the things we want become the things we need, the advertisers win. I just said that. I don't know why I read it again. My bad. So there's so much ground to cover with these things, and you could watch. I mean, I only put like 10 different ones on the post and in class, and there's hundreds, if not thousands, of them. So they're always fun to go back to. A little about SNL. A bunch of you commented on just the show itself. Like, it's been on since 1975, and it's been doing this kind of stuff since 1975. So it's arguably I don't want to say most reliable, but most consistent cultural critic that we have. I mean, 1975, like was two, and it's a variety show. So for it has to have different kinds of, there has to be physical comedy, there has to be political stuff, there has to be sort of like, bizarre or eccentric things, or like absurdist stuff. There's music, there's, they're trying, it's a variety show in and of itself, which means, that's why a lot of people are like, well, some of them are hit and miss. Well, some of them aren't for you, so to speak. Like some sketches are pointed at a totally different demographic or different social set. So that is what some people view as its weakness, is I think one of its strengths, is that it gives you that. And a bunch of people, you guys commented that you watched it when you were younger. The humor and comedy grows with you, right? When I watched when I was younger, it was all about Chris Farley breaking a table, like physical, like haha, getting kicked in the nuts and stuff like that. But you get older and you start to realize the nuance and things like that, and you love that stuff, but you start to crave more of the political satire or the social satire and things like that. And it has all of it. It runs the entire gamut. So that's just one of the strengths of the show in general. These commercials expose both the industry and the actual issues themselves, right? So every one of those parodies is in some way criticizing the advertising industry as a whole. But each one, I mentioned this before, but each one is about a specific cultural issue. So it's like Shrek, right? Layers. Onions too, as you know. Something about comedy in general, and this, you guys, some of you picked it up, like everything in the media is biased. But my take is that comedy is the least biased of everything else. Mostly because it it exists where the shit's most fucked up, as you know. I've said that before, and I'll say it again. But one of the goals of comedy is to sort of present things as they are and see them differently, look at them differently, right? I think most comedians, stand up, TV, film, sketch, whatever it is, they don't really care what you think about it. They're not trying to convince you of something, like a politician or somebody in your church, or like a clergyman. They're not trying to get you over to their side or convince you. The agenda is for you to think. Like, that is the least biased. It's biased. SNL is left leaning, sure, but the bubble sketch, the woke sketch, like, it's not like they ignore the problems of the left, right? So yes, it's biased, but I would argue comedy is the least biased. It's the closest to, a non-biased source as you're going to get, and that's across the board, not just with sketch. So that sort of, as disenfranchising as advertising is, trying to trick you all the time, comedy is franchising in that you kind of know it's not trying to trick you. I think that's what I'm going for. So I mentioned Lizzie's point about access, right? Comedy in general, but sketch specifically, it's an access point to ideas and theories and discussions and uh, change that you don't get anywhere else, right? It's access to those ideas because we let our guard down a little bit, when we know something's supposed to be, something's comedic. You let your guard down, you open your mind, you listen more, you're trying to get the joke and trying to follow it and understand the context and all those kinds of things. Those are all good things. Like when you're trying to have discourse with another human being. Um, and comedy is a great access point for things that people don't really want to talk about. Like, look, think about some of the things in those commercials, right? The Pep Boys one is talking about, you know, their gender flecked campaign and Next for Men. Like, that was a ballsy commercial to make at the time. Came out right during Me Too Time's Up, and it was an attempt. Whether it hit or missed almost doesn't matter. It's that SNL was like, we have to do something about this. Let's try to make a point about it, and I think they did. Um, but they went there. It's comedy's job to go there, and um, they have more freedom to go there than I think a lot of other avenues. Um, the Wokes. A lot of you guys commented on the Wokes commercial, which is it's almost perfect. It brings up this idea like, has the woke movement sort of gone too far? Like, has the pendulum swung too far in the other direction, right? Or it's like it swung this way where everyone's a fucking bigot, and it swung this way to where everyone's a fucking bigot again, just against different people. Um, and this all-inclusive thing, and everybody's the same. Like, what is the goal? Is it complete homogenization? Like, 'cause I don't think that's really, but that's it seems like where we're headed with it. Um, that doesn't seem like a fruitful endeavor for everybody to be the same. Um, so yeah, the Wokes one. My favorite line from the Wokes one was, Levi's heard that being woke is good. So, and that makes you think, like, of course. So let's say Levi's does something like this. Well, do you think like that's just pandering? That's just straight up pandering, and commercials love to do that. Like, do you really think the Levi's Corporation gives a fuck about your sexuality or your personal identity? They don't. They just want you to fucking buy their shit, and they'll say and do anything in order to make that happen. They'll make jeans with a Unifly and 180-degree zipper just to get everybody. Because it's not at all unlike the Dudleys. Like, once you start taking everybody's opinion and feelings and offenses into account, you lose any sort of identity, you lose any sort of individuality or anything interesting about it. So the Wokes one, the Wokes one's pretty good. They fit everybody because they fit nobody. I think that was one of the lines. I like Chris's point about the bubble. The two that you guys really latched onto the most, I guess there were more, but were Wokes and the bubble. The bubble is interesting. One, because it's decidedly anti-left. Not anti-left, but you know what I mean. Critical of the left. But Chris had this idea that, yes, we are in an American bubble first, and now there are bubbles inside of that bubble. Like, if you look at the world, America kind of lives in a bubble. Like, our shit is really not that bad compared to a lot of other, and we block out the rest of the world for the most part. But in the country now, it's like got this big bubble, and now we're trying to put two bubbles, two or three bubbles inside the other bubble. I thought that was an interesting take. I mentioned the Next for Men ad. I just thought that was ballsy. Um, and again, comedy's supposed to go there, right? It's fucked up. Let's go. Let's see how we can make this funny and meaningful at the same time, which is, entertainment and enlightenment in all cases. Um, Samantha, I talked about pandering. Samantha was talking about basically that, like the way ads just pander to you. Um, Wokes has the woke movement or overcorrected? Like, I think it has. I'm certainly for everyone having a voice and everyone being recognized and represented, but at some point, like, you overcorrect. Like, you have to find the middle. I'll talk about this all semester, virtually everything we watch. You never want to be at an extreme, at an end of a spectrum, right? Liberal, conservative. You never want to be so conservative that you can't even be in the same room with a liberal and vice versa. We should be somewhere in the middle. Both sides have something to offer, right? So let's meet in the middle, right? Male, female. Men should be more comfortable with their femininity, and women the same. It should be okay to be somewhere in the middle. And we're not. Like, the pendulum is just swinging. It's almost doing loops at this point. Yeah, do you think Levi's Corporation gives a shit about you? No. No, they don't. Blah, 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 blah. And then the last thing I have is Abby's comment about corn syrup. The corn syrup one. A couple of you commented on it. It's just, I always thought that was a funny commercial and we talked about it a little in class. Everyone in the commercial is a fucking moron, right? Like, that's, I think, one of the statements about it. And I can't remember who did it. It was Andrew, I think, wrote about how, like, in this case, the corn syrup conglomerate, they'll pay for any science to come out and be like, hey, it's good for you. Look, I mean, that's what cigarettes did for years. They just paid this rogue scientist to be like, yeah, cigarettes are they're good for you. They give you strong bones or whatever. So basically, that corn syrup commercial is interesting because there's the Kristen Wiig's character thinks she knows better than everyone, right? Sticks her nose where it shouldn't be, and is kind of obnoxious about it. And then Nasim Pedrad's character knows she's wrong. I mean, look at her daughter, but knows she's wrong and just sort of digs her heels in to not be wrong and mentions science. Listen to the scientists. And then Bobby Moynihan as the daughter, this enormous, like, crumbling diabetic daughter. It's just the clincher to the whole thing. It's just like, come on. And then, yeah, this is back to Andrew's point. The last line is like, visit our website and no other websites. So, I try to keep these videos to about 30 minutes long. It's at 34. So hopefully I threw some stuff at you that you like. And let's see, so I'll see you guys. I'll see some of you today, and some on Friday, and then on different some on Monday. You know how it works. But yeah, watch this. You can comment on these too. I mean, why not? It's college.